My son's in prison for something horrific he did at school, but still insists he did the right thing. They told me to stay calm before walking into the room, but how does a mother stay calm when her son has killed 3 people? Even now, I don't know what I expected to see. Remorse, fear, maybe a trace of the boy I used to tuck into bed. But when the door opened and they brought Noah in, I saw none of that. What I saw was emptiness. The kind of emptiness that eats through the soul. The visitation room was painfully cold, a rectangle of concrete and silence divided by a thick pane of glass. Everything about it felt designed to strip away the last traces of humanity. The pale fluorescent lights, the smell of metal and bleach, the hollow echo of footsteps as the guards moved back and forth. I sat on the plastic chair that creaked under my weight, clutching the gray phone in my hand. Through the glass, I could see my own reflection staring back at me, eyes sunken, skin pale. It was hard to believe that just 2 weeks ago I was helping Noah fill out college applications. Now I was waiting to speak to a murderer, my son. The door opened again, and he walked in, guided by an officer whose face was as unreadable as stone. Noah's head hung low, his dark hair falling across his forehead. His orange jumpsuit looked too big for him, hanging loosely on a frame that had once been strong and restless. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. When he finally sat down, he didn't look up right away. I realized then that I didn't know whether to smile or cry. The guard gave me a curt nod and stepped back. We were alone, separated by the glass, united by the weight of everything we could no longer undo. Noah picked up his phone. I did the same, my fingers trembling. For a second, neither of us spoke. The silence between us said more than any words could. Then, finally, I whispered, "Hi, sweetheart." His voice was quiet, fragile. "Hey, Mom, how are they treating you?" I asked, forcing my voice not to shake. "It's okay," he said. "I deserve it." I flinched. "Don't say that. You're still my son." He didn't respond. He just stared at the table, the faint hum of the fluorescent lights filling the silence. My throat tightened. I had come here to ask him why, to understand what had driven him to do what he did. But now that he was in front of me, the question felt like a knife I couldn't bring myself to use. "Noah," I finally said, my voice cracking, "why did you do it?" He looked up then, slowly, and I almost wished he hadn't. His eyes weren't the eyes of a killer. They were scared, haunted. "Because I had to," he said softly. My heart pounded in my chest. Had to? Noah, they were children. They didn't deserve to die. He shook his head, his lips trembling. "You don't understand, Mom. They weren't children. Not anymore." The officer behind him shifted slightly, his expression tightening, but Noah didn't seem to notice. His words came faster now, his voice trembling with urgency. "You didn't see them like I did. You didn't see what they became after dark." My stomach turned. "Noah, what are you talking about?" "They were pretending," he said, leaning closer to the glass. "They looked human, but they weren't. Something else was inside them. Controlling them." His tone sent a chill down my spine. I wanted to believe he was delusional, traumatized, desperate for a reason that could make sense of the horror. But something in his eyes made me hesitate. It wasn't madness I saw. It was fear. If they hurt you, if they bullied you, "They didn't hurt me," he snapped, his voice echoing in the sterile room. The guard stepped forward, hand on his shoulder. "That's enough," he warned. 5 more minutes. Noah ignored him. "They weren't human, Mom," he whispered. "I had to stop them before they hurt anyone else." I could barely breathe. My hand pressed against the glass, as if I could somehow reach through it. "Stop them from what?" He hesitated, glancing toward the camera above us. Then he leaned closer, his lips barely moving. "You need to look in the glove compartment." "What?" "Please, Mom," he said, desperation flooding his voice. "Promise me. Look in the glove compartment. You'll see." The guard pulled him up by the arm. "Time's up." Noah struggled slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. "Promise me." "Noah." But the door closed before I could answer. I sat there frozen, staring at my own reflection again. My hand still held the phone, even though the line had gone dead. I didn't cry right away. I couldn't. My body was too numb to remember how. It wasn't until I walked back to my car that the first tear fell. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, the rain tapping softly on the windshield, the prison lights glowing faintly in the rearview mirror. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I wanted to start the car and drive away to pretend this was all some nightmare, but then I remembered his voice. "Look in the glove compartment." I almost reached for it, almost, but I stopped myself. I couldn't handle one more truth tonight. I turned the key and pulled out of the parking lot. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon disappearing into darkness. I told myself I was just tired, that Noah was sick, that this was all part of some psychotic episode born from trauma and guilt. But deep down, a seed of doubt had already taken root. As I drove through the rain, headlights flickering across the wet asphalt, I realized a car was behind me. A black SUV, headlights dimmed, keeping its distance. I slowed down. It slowed too. My chest tightened. I took the next exit, so did it. I turned left, then right. It stayed behind me the whole way. When I finally pulled into a gas station, it parked across the street, engine still running. My fingers hovered over my phone, ready to call the police, but what would I say? That I thought someone was following me because my son told me to check my glove compartment? I stepped out, pretending not to notice the SUV. The cold air hit my face, sharp and metallic. I went inside, bought a coffee I didn't want, and waited by the window. After a few minutes, the SUV pulled away, disappearing down the road. Relief flooded me, though it didn't last long. As I walked back to my car, I noticed something strange. A piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. My name was written on it in neat, careful handwriting. Just my name. Nothing else. I tore it off, heart pounding, and got into the car. I locked the doors and threw the paper onto the passenger seat. I didn't open it, not yet. Not until I was home. The drive back to Ravenwood was quiet, the rain finally easing to a drizzle. The lights of the town came into view, a fragile little glow against the darkness. When I turned onto my street, I felt like an intruder in my own life. Every porch light, every window, every familiar tree looked wrong, slightly tilted, as if the world had shifted while I was gone. My house waited for me at the end of the road, its silhouette heavy against the mist. The porch light flickered once, then steadied. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat there in the silence. The paper on the seat felt heavier than it should have. Slowly, I unfolded it. There were only 3 words written inside. They are watching. My hands went cold. I looked up, scanning the street. Nothing moved. The curtains in my neighbor's windows were drawn. The air was still. Too still. I shoved the note into my pocket, grabbed my bag, and went inside, locking the door behind me. The house was dark and quiet, the air faintly scented with the lavender candle I'd forgotten to blow out that morning. Everything looked the same, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been here. I checked every room, every corner, every window. Nothing. But when I came back to the living room, I noticed something I hadn't before. A small smear on the doorknob. It looked like oil, black, thick. I wiped it off with a tissue and stared at my shaking hands. It was probably nothing. It had to be nothing. Upstairs, Noah's room was exactly as he left it. The telescope by the window, his notebook stacked neatly, the blanket folded at the end of the bed. I sat down, the silence pressing against me. I wanted to feel close to him, to understand him, but all I felt was a growing sense of dread. What had my son become afraid of? What had he seen? I stayed there for hours, lost in thought until exhaustion pulled me to my feet. Before turning off the light, I glanced at the glove compartment key lying on my dresser. It glinted faintly in the dark. I told myself I'd open it tomorrow, but sleep never came. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah's face again, his whisper behind the glass, his desperate eyes, and the echo of his words lingered in the darkness. You need to look in the glove compartment. The drive home felt longer than usual. The air was heavy, pressing against the windshield like fog. My hands stayed tight on the wheel, as if I could hold the world together by sheer force. Every mile between me and the prison felt unreal, like a dream that wouldn't let me wake. Noah's words echoed again and again in my head. Look in the glove compartment. I didn't know what I expected to find. Evidence? A note? Some twisted explanation for why my son had become a murderer? The thought of opening it made my stomach knot. The road signs blurred by as I left the highway. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier, drumming against the roof. I drove through the storm like a ghost, headlights slicing through the water. When I reached the outskirts of Ravenwood, my street felt almost foreign. The same old oak trees stood there, the same flickering streetlights, but everything felt off, like a stage built to resemble my life. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. No neighbors outside. No sound except the rain and the ticking of the engine. I sat there for a while before I opened the glove compartment. My fingers hesitated on the latch. I told myself it would be empty, that maybe Noah had been delusional, desperate to find meaning in something meaningless. But when I finally opened it, my heart jumped. There it was. A small silver flash drive taped under the lid. No markings, no note. Just cold metal. I stared at it for a long time before I took it out, holding it in my palm like it might burn me. For a second, I thought of throwing it away. But the thought of Noah's eyes, that pleading look when he said you'll understand, wouldn't let me. I locked the doors, shut the blinds, and took the drive inside. The house felt emptier than it ever had. The pictures on the walls, Noah's graduation, our summer at the lake, all seemed like relics from another life. The news had painted him as a monster, but in these pictures, he was just a boy who loved astronomy and cinnamon pancakes. I made tea without realizing what I was doing, needing the routine to hold me together. The kettle's whistle was sharp, almost violent. I poured, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared at the flash drive again. I still didn't trust myself to open it. Not yet. To calm my nerves, I turned on the television. A news anchor's voice filled the room, her tone carefully neutral. The Ravenwood High tragedy continues to raise questions about how such violence could go unnoticed. The shooter, 17-year-old Noah Lewis, remains in custody pending trial. Officials have released few details about the motive. I turned it off. That word, shooter, made me sick. They reduced my child to that. When the storm eased outside, I decided I needed air. The grocery bags I'd abandoned earlier were still in the car. I grabbed my umbrella and went back outside. The world was quiet now, wrapped in mist. But as I reached my car, a movement caught my eye. A figure standing at the end of the street, half hidden under a streetlight, tall, still, watching. I froze. my breath catching. The figure didn't move for several seconds, then turned and walked away slowly, disappearing into the fog. I didn't follow. I couldn't. I rushed back inside, locking the door behind me. My pulse hammered in my ears. Whoever that was, if it even was someone, they'd been standing in the exact same spot where the black SUV had parked earlier. It couldn't be a coincidence. I went upstairs and sat in Noah's old room. It looked exactly how he'd left it, neat, organized, everything in its place. His telescope by the window, a shelf of astronomy books, a poster of the solar system above his bed. I sat on his chair, spinning it slightly. The air smelled faintly of old laundry and dust. How had I missed it? How had I not seen that something was wrong? I remembered him staying up late, the glow of his computer screen leaking under the door. He said he was editing videos, working on school projects. I never asked what they were about. Maybe I didn't want to know. Maybe I was just tired, always working late shifts, always assuming that silence meant safety. I reached for the flash drive again, feeling its edges press into my skin. It was time. I went back downstairs and turned on my work laptop. It was clean, new, since the police had seized everything after the investigation. No traces of Noah's old files. When I plugged the drive in, a single folder appeared. Truth. Inside were dozens of files. Photos, some labeled with dates, others with strange numbers and letters. I clicked the first one. It was a picture of 3 teenagers in a school hallway, smiling, laughing, the same faces I'd seen on the news. Alex Moore, Jamie Reeves, Sophie Grant, the kids Noah killed. The next photo showed them in the cafeteria, sitting together, heads close, whispering about something. Then another, walking through the parking lot after dark. Another, standing near the football field. At first, I thought Noah had been stalking them, but the angles of the pictures didn't look like his. They were too distant, too careful, as if taken from surveillance footage. Then the tone shifted. One picture showed Alex standing over something on the ground, something that looked like a body. The photo was blurry, but I could see a dark stain spreading across the concrete. Another image showed the 3 of them dragging something heavy down a maintenance hallway. My throat went dry. Then came the final sequence. Darker, grainier, taken in what looked like the tunnels beneath the gym. The 3 students stood together in the dim light, their faces expressionless, their eyes wrong, completely white. In front of them was a girl I didn't recognize. Lying motionless in a pool of blood, I covered my mouth, trying not to scream. Each picture grew worse. The bodies, the strange symbols on the walls, the flicker of something inhuman in their faces. The final image showed Sophie turning toward the camera. Even through the blur, I could see her mouth twisted into a smile that wasn't hers. That was when I heard the noise. A faint creak. The front door opening. My blood froze. I turned off the laptop, grabbed it, and pressed my back against the wall. My first thought was the man from the SUV. My second, the figure from the streetlight. Hello? I called out, my voice trembling. Who's there? Silence. Then soft footsteps across the floorboards. I slipped into the hallway, moving as quietly as I could. My phone was still charging in the kitchen. I needed to get there. The knife block was next to it. When I reached the end of the hall, I saw her, a pale silhouette standing in the doorway, rain dripping from her coat. Margaret? I whispered. She smiled faintly, stepping inside. I told you we'd see each other again. Every instinct in me screamed to run. What are you doing here? I was worried, she said. I wanted to make sure you didn't open it. She looked at the laptop in my hand. Her tone was calm, but there was something under it. A vibration in her voice that didn't sound human. Open what? I asked the drive, she said simply. You shouldn't have looked, Eleanor. Now they'll come for you. I backed away slowly. You need to leave. She stepped closer, her eyes catching the dim light, and for a split second they flashed white. Margaret, I whispered, shaking my head. What's wrong with you? She tilted her head, her smile widening too far, stretching in a way no face should. Don't fight it, she murmured. It's easier when you don't resist. Then my body locked. Every muscle froze as if invisible hands had seized me. My limbs wouldn't move, my throat wouldn't open. I could feel my heart pounding, but the rest of me was stone. Margaret walked closer, her movements slow and deliberate, savoring my terror. Humans are such fragile things, she said softly. Her fingers began to shift, the skin peeling back, revealing something metallic beneath, sharp and wet and alive. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. She raised her hand toward my face. You should have stayed ignorant, Eleanor. Then a window shattered. Gunshots exploded through the room, each one a thunderclap. Margaret jerked violently, holes ripping through her chest. Her body convulsed, collapsing in a heap on the floor. The glowing in her eyes flickered, then vanished. I fell to the ground as my body unfroze, gasping for air. Through the shattered window stepped a man in black tactical gear, weapons still raised. The same man from the SUV, he approached cautiously, scanning the body before lowering his gun. Mrs. Lewis, he said, voice calm but firm. You need to come with me now. I couldn't speak. I just stared at Margaret's body, at the thing that used to be her. the metallic gleam under her skin, the black fluid seeping onto my carpet. He knelt beside me, his hand light on my shoulder. "You're not safe here," he said softly. "They know what your son found?" My voice came out a whisper. "What are they?" He looked at me for a long time before answering. "Not from this world." The drive was a blur of rain and flashing lights. The man, Carter, he finally said his name was, kept his hands steady on the wheel as if he had done this 100 times before. His face was unreadable, his jaw locked tight, his eyes scanning every passing car in the mirrors. I sat beside him in silence, trembling, trying not to look at the smear of blood on his sleeve. My thoughts refused to settle. Margaret's body, the inhuman flicker of her eyes, the impossible sound of her voice, all of it replayed in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. When I tried to speak, my voice cracked. "What was she?" I asked. "What did I just see?" Carter didn't look at me. "Not a person anymore," he said. "You saw what happens when they take over. You're lucky you're alive." His words didn't comfort me. They only deepened the hole opening inside me. "You keep saying they. Who are they?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Not aliens, if that's what you're thinking. Not demons either. Something else. Something older." The windshield wipers beat rhythmically as he continued. "We call them mimics. They inhabit human hosts. They replicate perfectly, voice, memory, even emotion. They're parasites, but they don't feed the way you'd expect. They consume belief, connection. They thrive on imitation until nothing real is left." I stared at him, shaking my head. "That sounds insane." He glanced at me briefly. "Does it? You saw one die. Did she bleed like a human?" I wanted to say yes, but the image of that black, viscous fluid made my stomach turn. "No," I whispered. "Then start believing." He said it with such conviction that I couldn't argue. "Your son found them before we did," he continued. He stumbled onto a nest under Ravenwood High. The tunnels you saw in those pictures weren't part of any school map. They were old, built during the Cold War, later sealed off. The mimics had been nesting there for years, maybe decades. I tried to process it, but it felt impossible. "You're saying those kids, the ones Noah killed, they weren't human?" "Not anymore," Carter said. "They'd already turned." I pressed my forehead against the cold window. So my son was right. He didn't kill innocent people. Carter didn't answer. Maybe because he didn't want to admit it. Maybe because the truth didn't fit into the world we thought we lived in. We drove for another hour through back roads and abandoned industrial zones until we reached what looked like a defunct radio tower. The gate was rusted, the sign half erased by time. "Property of Federal Communications." Carter keyed in a code at a small panel. The ground beneath us shuddered as a metal door slid open, revealing a ramp descending underground. "This is one of our old facilities," he said. "We use it for containment." The ramp led into a tunnel lit by flickering red lights. I followed him, every instinct screaming to turn back, but curiosity kept me moving. The air smelled of dust and metal. The corridor opened into a wide concrete chamber filled with monitors, wires, and heavy doors. Carter led me to a room behind reinforced glass. When I saw who was inside, my knees almost gave out. Noah, my son. He was sitting on a narrow bed, his wrists shackled, his eyes hollow but alert. When he looked up and saw me, his face changed, the smallest spark of light cutting through the numbness. "Mom." His voice came through a speaker above me. I pressed my hand to the glass. "Noah, oh my God." He stood, the chains clinking softly. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice shaking. "They'll come for you too." "I know," I said, trying to smile through the tears. "But I needed to see you. I needed to tell you that I believe you." His eyes widened slightly. "You saw them?" "Yes," I whispered. "One of them came to the house. Margaret. She wasn't human anymore." He nodded slowly, almost sadly. "Then it's already spreading." Carter stepped closer to the intercom. "Noah, we're moving your mother to a safe location. We'll handle containment." Noah's expression changed, sharp, defiant. "Containment? You don't understand. You can't contain them." "We've handled worse," Carter replied. "No," Noah said. "You haven't." His voice had a strange intensity now, like he was remembering something. "They don't die, not really. You can destroy the host, but the thing inside survives. It finds another body. It hides." He looked straight into the camera above him, the red recording light reflecting in his eyes. "They're already inside your system." The intercom went dead. Carter swore under his breath and left the room to speak into his radio. I stayed by the glass, watching Noah as he sat back down on the bed. He looked so small, so tired. "Mom," he mouthed, even without the microphone. "Run." That was when the alarms began. A shrill mechanical scream filled the bunker, followed by the sound of gunfire echoing down the hall. Carter burst back into the room, grabbing me by the arm. "We have to go." "What's happening?" I yelled over the sirens. "Breach! Containment breach!" "They're inside." My heart seized. "Noah! We'll get him!" Carter shouted, pulling me toward the corridor. Red lights flashed wildly as armed soldiers sprinted past us. The smell of ozone and smoke filled the air. Somewhere down the hall, something screeched, a sound that didn't belong to any human throat. Carter pushed me into a side passage. The walls shook. Ahead we saw a soldier running toward us, blood soaking his chest. "They're everywhere," he gasped before collapsing. I barely had time to react before a shadow darted across the ceiling, too fast to see clearly. Carter fired upward, the muzzle flashes lighting the hallway in strobing bursts. The creature fell, a blur of limbs and tendons, and hit the floor with a wet crack. For a second it looked human. Then its skin split open, revealing something crawling beneath. Carter grabbed my hand and dragged me forward. Move! We reached a blast door and he slammed the panel. The door sealed with a heavy thud. My chest heaved as I tried to breathe. Where's Noah? I screamed. Carter's radio crackled to life with static and distant gunfire. A voice came through, distorted, panicked. Cell 3 compromised. Subject missing. Repeat, subject missing. Carter's face went pale. Noah's gone. Before I could respond, the lights flickered and went out. Only the red emergency bulbs remained, casting everything in blood-colored shadows. Carter reloaded his weapon and handed me a flashlight. Stay close. We find your son and we get out. Understand? I nodded, gripping the flashlight so tightly my knuckles hurt. The corridors seemed to twist endlessly as we moved through them. Every sound, dripping pipes, echoing footsteps, distant cries, felt amplified in the silence. Once, I thought I saw movement behind us, but when I turned, there was nothing. They can smell fear, Carter said quietly. Stay calm. Easy for him to say. My whole body was shaking. We reached a security hub filled with monitors. Carter turned one on manually. The screens flickered to life, showing camera feeds from different parts of the bunker. Most were static, but one showed Noah's cell, empty. The glass window had melted into a warped mess of metal and ash. On another screen, I caught a glimpse of movement, a dark figure limping down a hallway. The camera glitched, but for a second I was sure it was Noah. There! I shouted. Carter adjusted the feed, but it went black. He cursed. The control system's compromised. What does that mean? It means they're inside our network. The building itself is infected. He turned off the screens and faced me. We need to reach the surface before lockdown activates. We ran. My lungs burned, but adrenaline kept me moving. The hallways felt endless. Every time we turned a corner, something new rattled or whispered in the dark. Then suddenly a voice came through the intercom overhead, distorted yet familiar. Mom, I froze. It was Noah. If you can hear me, the voice said, don't trust him. I turned toward Carter. He's lying. Carter's expression didn't change. It's not him, he said quickly. They can mimic voices now. Don't listen. But my heart told me otherwise. Noah, I called out. Where are you? The intercom hissed again. They're using you, Mom. Run before it's too late. The lights above us flickered, then shattered. Darkness swallowed the corridor. Carter yanked me forward. Move! We reached an elevator shaft. The doors were jammed open, the car missing. A narrow maintenance ladder led upward. Climb, Carter ordered. I hesitated. What about you? I'll be right behind. I started climbing, the metal rungs slick with condensation. Halfway up, I looked down. Carter was below me, gun slung over his shoulder, flashlight bouncing. Then from the darkness beneath him, something lunged. A mass of limbs and teeth and glimmering eyes. Carter fired, the gunshots deafening in the confined space. The creature shrieked, falling back, but not before slashing across his leg. Go! He yelled, gritting his teeth. I climbed faster, my arms burning. We reached the top and forced the hatch open. Cold night air rushed in. The stars above looked impossibly distant. Carter dragged himself out after me, limping, and slammed the hatch shut. Is it over? I whispered. He looked at the trees surrounding the tower. Not even close. We stood there for a long moment, both catching our breath. The night was eerily quiet, no sirens, no birds, nothing. Then his radio crackled again. Unit Delta report. Containment breach confirmed. Subject Noah Lewis, unaccounted for. Possible escape. I felt my knees weaken. Carter didn't meet my eyes. He's alive, I whispered. He nodded. Maybe. But if he's out there, we have to find him before they do. The wind picked up, carrying the faint smell of smoke from below. The bunker was burning. Somewhere in the distance, a low rumble rolled across the forest, like thunder, but it wasn't thunder. It was the sound of something waking up. Carter tightened his grip on his rifle. We need to move. I turned one last time toward the trees, searching the darkness. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, a figure standing at the edge of the clearing, watching. My heart leapt, but when I blinked, it was gone. Maybe it was just the wind. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, I knew then that nothing in Ravenwood would ever be the same again. 3 months have passed since the night the world ended, at least for me. They moved me to another city under a different name, gave me a small apartment in a concrete building that smells of bleach and loneliness. I have new papers, a new job at an insurance office, and a phone that rings only for the wrong numbers of strangers. Carter visits sometimes, though not often. When he does, he looks older, like the shadows from that night have been feeding on him too. He tells me things are under control, but I can hear the exhaustion behind those words. The news never mentions the bunker or Ravenwood High or my son. They called it an electrical accident that destroyed the facility. 27 people were listed as dead. Noah's name wasn't one of them. At night, I sit by the window with a cup of tea that always goes cold, watching the city hum beneath me. Everything looks ordinary here. Neon lights, buses, tired people going home, but ordinary has lost all meaning. Sometimes, when the TV flickers between channels, I think I see static patterns that move like shapes, almost like faces. I change the channel quickly and tell myself it's nothing. Carter warned me that they adapt, that the mimics can travel through signals, through data, through anything that connects one consciousness to another. The infection isn't physical, he told me. It's informational. They copy and overwrite. That's what makes them unstoppable. He wanted to relocate me again, somewhere off-grid, but I refused. What's the point of hiding when the world itself might already be infected? I dream of Noah almost every night. In the dreams, he's still the boy I raised. Gentle, brilliant, always looking at the stars. We're sitting on the back porch, eating pancakes, and he tells me about constellations I've never heard of. But then his voice changes. It gets lower, distant, like it's coming through a radio, and the sky above us turns white. I always wake up before he finishes the sentence. Last night was different. The static on the television started on its own, just as I was about to go to bed. At first, it was just white noise, but then the signal pulsed, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. A faint voice came through, almost inaudible at first, then clearer. Mom. My hands went numb. The voice was his. I turned the volume up slowly. Mom, it's me. I whispered his name like a prayer. Noah, where are you? Don't be afraid, he said. I'm fine now. I made it out. My chest ached. Where are you? Please tell me. Silence for a moment, then the sound of wind, like he was outside somewhere. You can't see me yet, he said. They're still watching. Who? I asked, but the question felt meaningless. I already knew the answer. They're not done, he whispered. They never are. The screen flickered, and for a second, I saw him. Just a blur of his face, older, thinner, standing in some empty field. Behind him, lights moved in the sky, too bright, too smooth to be planes. Then the image distorted, breaking into shards of light. The signal died. I ran to the window. The street below was empty, but across the road, in the reflection of the glass buildings, I thought I saw a figure standing under a lamppost. Tall still, just watching. My breath fogged the glass as I leaned closer, but when a car passed, the figure vanished. I told Carter about it the next morning. He listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he asked only one question. Did he sound like himself? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, he did, too much. Every pause, every word, every breath. It wasn't a recording. It was him. Carter sighed, rubbed his temples, and said he'd look into it. Before he left, he placed a small device on my table, a black box with blinking green lights. Keep this near your TV, he said. If the signal comes again, this will detect it. And then what? Then we'll know if it's really him. I wanted to ask what he meant by really, but I didn't. I think he didn't want to know either. That night, I didn't turn on the television. I sat in the dark, staring at the blinking light of the device, waiting for it to change. It stayed green for hours, steady and calm. Then sometime past midnight, it flickered once, just once, and turned red. The sound came next. Faint, almost like breathing through the walls. Then a whisper, so close it felt like it came from inside my head. Mom, I didn't move. They're here, the voice said. But I'm keeping them busy. Don't be afraid. Noah, I whispered, tears in my throat. Where are you? Everywhere. The lights in the apartment dimmed for a second, and then everything went silent. The device blinked back to green. Outside the city was quiet. I went to the window again, unable to stop myself. Down on the street, under the streetlight, a figure stood once more, just like before. Same stillness, same posture. I couldn't see his face, but I knew. He raised one hand slowly, almost like a wave. And then he was gone. It's morning now. I haven't slept. Carter hasn't answered my calls. The device on the table hasn't blinked again. The world outside looks normal, the city waking up, people going to work, children laughing in the distance, but I know better. They're still out there. Maybe everywhere. Maybe even here. Sometimes I think I can feel Noah near me. Not like a ghost, but like a signal. Something humming just beneath the skin of the world. Maybe he became part of them. Maybe he's fighting them from within. Or maybe he's already one of them, and this is how they win. By turning our love into the doorway they walk through. The sun is rising now, and its light hits the window, reflecting my face back at me. For a second, I see another face behind mine. Faint, like a second reflection layered over the first. It looks like Noah, and his eyes are white. 3 months have passed since the night the world ended, at least for me. They moved me to another city, under a different name, gave me a small apartment in a concrete building that smells of bleach and loneliness. I have new papers, a new job at an insurance office, and a phone that rings only for the wrong numbers of strangers. Carter visits sometimes, though not often. When he does, he looks older, like the shadows from that night have been feeding on him too. He tells me things are under control, but I can hear the exhaustion behind those words. The news never mentions the bunker, or Ravenwood High, or my son. They called it an electrical accident that destroyed the facility. 27 people were listed as dead. Noah's name wasn't one of them. At night, I sit by the window with a cup of tea that always goes cold, watching the city hum beneath me. Everything looks ordinary here. Neon lights, buses, tired people going home, but ordinary has lost all meaning. Sometimes when the TV flickers between channels, I think I see static patterns that move like shapes, almost like faces. I change the channel quickly and tell myself it's nothing. Carter warned me that they adapt, that the mimics can travel through signals, through data, through anything that connects one consciousness to another. The infection isn't physical, he told me. It's informational. They copy and overwrite. That's what makes them unstoppable. He wanted to relocate me again, somewhere off-grid, but I refused. What's the point of hiding when the world itself might already be infected? I dream of Noah almost every night,